Hello, Nigel, and welcome. And thank you, Finnosummit, for the opportunity to chat with Nigel Morris, one of the co-founders and managing partner of QED, one of the great fintech investors around the world and definitely in Latin America. Thank you, Fermin and Andres, for the invitation, and welcome, Nigel.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much. Latin America is very close to our heart, so look forward to our conversation today.
Great. Well, let's get into it, Nigel. No need for introductions or any of those formalities. Because everybody knows who you are and who QED is, and you guys have an amazing reputation in the region. So, I mean, you've been investing since 2015, so it's now been 6 years. And it'd be interesting to know, Nigel, what is it you saw in the region initially? What has changed? And what do you see in the future? Because you continue to invest, so definitely you are optimistic. So help us with that, Nigel, just to get us started.
I'd be happy to. The story begins actually not with a real focus on an analysis of Latin America and why we should invest in the economics of Brazil or of Mexico or other countries. It was much more serendipitous. So I actually was with David Velez, and he was a young associate at General Atlantic. This is even before he went off to Stanford and worked with Sequoia. And he said, Nigel, I think there's a terrific opportunity to build a Capital One in Brazil. And will you help me think about that? And to be honest, I said, look, I'm not so sure that I can, David. QED is very US and UK focused, and I'm not sure if we have the bandwidth to really think about Brazil. And candidly, it's not something that we'd spend a lot of time on. So serendipitously, we went forward with David, and we helped him think about a credit card business in Brazil. We recognized that the consumer was not being served well at all. There was huge friction and very little digital. Very little focus on how do you help a consumer, navigate their life with the use of a credit card. And the incumbents were actually not leveraging the functionality and capability that we'd seen in the US and the UK with credit cards. So we helped David think about how to enter the market, and the rest is history. I mean, he's done an absolutely fantastic job building talent and capability. So then once we had a foothold in Brazil with Nubank, and we saw the opportunity, then it was really the floodgates opened, and we saw just so many opportunities with so many businesses. I want to say a shout out to the team of Bill Salufo, Mike Packer, Laura Morton, Fernando Gonzalez, Anna Chris. These are ex-operators that have done an amazing job of investing in now 30 companies in Latin America, Álvaro. 6 of them unicorns: Nubank, Quinto Andar, Loft, Kavak, Creditas, Bitso. I mean, these are just enormously powerful and amazing platforms that have been built over the last 7 or 8 years. So what does the future look like? I think more of the same and better, in that the icons that have been developed out there in the marketplace, it can be done. The incumbents are weak. There's half of Latin America is not part of the financial system in any meaningful way, and the friction points are all over the place. So I think we're going to see more talent, more money, and more opportunity over these next 7 years, but much more than the last 7.
Well, that's a testament, Nigel, to your quote saying fintech is winning, and those are the reasons definitely why fintech is winning. And I'm sure you're seeing many of the elements that you saw almost 30 years ago when you were a disruptor of many incumbents with Capital One, and now you're seeing many of these new talent disrupting the incumbents. So I share your optimism. Now, in these opportunities and looking forward, and a lot of the narrative towards Latin America is that there's a high unbanked or underbanked population. And, for example, the LATAM population that has a bank account is 44%, versus Asia, which is, for example, 63%. So a lot, and that's not taking into account Japan and China, because not to skew the numbers. So a lot of the narrative is around that. Now, there's also the narrative that you're really trying to disrupt incumbents, which is going after the clients. Which of those two narratives do you think it's more powerful and the one that you like most?
I think the opportunities are extensive in both areas. So if we look at Nubank again, we're using them as an example, where they started in Brazil was very much with the middle class. They were offering credit lines to people who already were part of the financial service system. They were being served by the large Brazilian banks, and they weren't getting the quality of service, the customer centricity that Nubank could provide. The net promoter scores of the large banks in Brazil and Mexico are low, and the net promoter scores of the new banks of this world are in the 60s and 70s. So there's a huge gap there. So, and if we think about a company like Warren that is democratizing investing, we're seeing opportunities for the middle classes because the incumbents are not providing those services. Now, what is I think, and I think that's different largely to the US and the UK, where the large banks in the Citi, Chase, Capital One, Barclays, they are doing a pretty solid job for the established population. Now, in the US, because I think the banks have not wanted to serve the underserved, we've seen Chime and Varo and Amount, Albert, we've seen Current, companies, some of which companies we've invested in, who digitally are meeting the needs of the underserved populations. And I think that market is very, very attractive across Latin America too. And if we think about Nubank again and what they're doing as they go into Mexico, is they're beginning to learn how to tap into that underserved population in Mexico. So I think both are really exciting. I think both populations, the served and the underserved, have different needs but they are increasingly, as you mentioned earlier, digitally native and very much looking for opportunities to work with entities other than the incumbent banks. But the incumbent banks, like in the US, in Latin America, they have not really wanted to serve the underserved. That's just why would that be? Let's be clear. One, lending money to them is precarious because they don't have much money, and you have to be really careful about using orthogonal data sets and being good at credit management, which was the hallmark of Capital One you mentioned earlier. And two, they don't have a lot of money, so the deposits are not worth very much. They're not worth very much anyway in this interest rate environment. But so if I've got an established branch infrastructure, serving the underserved is very uneconomic. So it's the digital disruptors who can actually really open up half of Latin America that at the moment is being issued by the traditional banks.
Right. Well, it's a long discussion whether the emerging middle class is profitable to serve or not. Obviously, there's been huge businesses being built in Latin America on that. But also, we've talked about population and the underserved and middle class, but we haven't talked about the SMEs. And you guys are invested in companies that serve the SMEs. So obviously, it's also a huge opportunity in Latin America. What's your perspective on that segment of the population to be served with financial services?
Look, you and I were talking about this earlier. Confio, Credit Yusto, Tiago Pago. I mean, these are entities that are focusing on small and medium-sized businesses and helping them grow. It's very interesting to me that the traditional banks in Latin America have not wanted to serve this population. I mean, it has insane need in the marketplace. It's the engine that drives so many economies. And the banks often say, look, we're on the ground with our communities, we're really helping our communities, but they haven't really been willing and able perhaps to offer credit in particular, but also other services to SMEs. So when we talk to the communities, when we talk to regulators, I think they see the benefit that the fintech community can offer products and services that the banks have not been willing to do. Now, in order to do that well, and if we look at the firepower that a Confio can bring to the table, or Credit Justo, I mean, the talent is extraordinary, and it has to be amazing talent. See, we often say that that building a fintech business out of the ground is really hard, really lonely as a CEO. You've got to have the talent and the data and the right people around you. I often say it's like 0.9 to the power 6. You've got to get so many 0.9s to work in a conditional probability, and therefore it's really difficult to spin all those plates. You've got to get compliance and regulation. You've got to get treasury and credit risk. You've got to get the right culture and people. You have to worry about cyber risk and fraud. I mean, there's so many things that you have to do. It's very hard to build a business out of the ground. And where we do see entities like, again, Confio, who have got amazing escape velocity, is they've been able to navigate that. So I think the SME space is wide open across Latin America, and I do not see actually competition from the banks gearing up.
Yeah, you have to scratch your head when you wonder why they are not addressing that market, but they are not, and that's one of the reasons why it's a huge opportunity. And I agree with you that one of the big benefits that we have in Latin America is the quality of the talent. And we've always said that 2019 was a little bit of, or not a bit, it was an inflection point for Latin America, because that's where the big checks started to come. So big funding rounds. And before that, we used to say, the talent is here, the market is here, we just need more funding. And fortunately, that has now changed. And in many ways, thanks to you guys, because you were one of the big investors from outside of Latin America to write big checks in Latin America. And I agree with you that there are always risks in this, but the size of the opportunity is so huge that definitely compensates for those risks. But moving on, Nigel. So we've talked about across for the target population to be served. But let's shift that diagram into sectors. So within financial services, as we've talked about, fintech is a mouthful, means many things. It can be lending, it can be payments, you are a recent crypto convert. It can be crypto. It can be insurance. It can be many things. So, and to give a sense to the audience, and there are many entrepreneurs here and funds, where do you see the big opportunities in terms of sectors and verticals in Latin America?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I would like to just to talk about talent just for a second, because I think QED is about to do our CEO conference in 2 weeks. And when we have canvassed our founder CEO population about what's the biggest thing on their mind, it is getting access to the talent that they need to scale. And I think there is a worldwide war on talent going on at the moment. When we look at these founders of our successful LATAM companies, we find a very distinct profile. Often they were undergrad in the best engineering and mathematical sciences in their local countries, and then went off to business school at Stanford, Harvard, and Wharton, and then often worked in the US, and then have come back, and I think that profile would fit many of the companies that we've talked about earlier. So one of the things that we have found very, very important is to repatriate talent from the US that began in Mexico or Brazil or Colombia, and encourage those people to go back to take on opportunities. And we have a small executive search firm that's been very active in doing that. And we have been willing to loan our talent, our operating talent within QED. Lauren Morton spent 6 months working with Creditas, helping them with analytics and strategy there, for example. So I think talent is a really, really key thing in order for venture and founders to continue to flourish in Latin America. And it's the new banks and these wonderful stories that will attract talent back into the country. And I think that's super. So let's go to what's really exciting. Well, there's so much that's exciting. First of all, philosophically, that we as QED start with, where's the problem? What's the pinch point for the consumer or the SME? Where's the friction? what people that come in with a technology and say, I've got a great technology, my AI is better than anybody else's, is not a business plan. So we start with where are the pinch points. So what's exciting? I think that if we're looking at unsecured lending, we've seen Creditas do a great job with secured lending, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for unsecured lending, particularly in Mexico. I think SME, you touched on that. I think that the opportunities are terrific, and to build out from lending into payments and into wealth management and into other services. The whole area of HR tech is really fascinating. We have Betterfly coming in from the first company actually that we invested in, started in Chile. And we've seen them now expand with an amazing team into other geographies. So Betterfly, Worky in Mexico, that's very interesting. The space of embedded finance, where you take an old clunky analog business, you digitalize it, and as a result of that, you can get into payments and lending and wealth management. I mean, Kavak are really doing that, and what an amazing company that is under Carlos. We also have a company that is Nuevo Cargo, that has basically digitalized the process of moving goods and trucks and drivers from Mexico into California. A very arduous process. They digitalized it, and with that comes the opportunities of insurance, comes the opportunity of lending, and there's a whole scope of different plays there. That's very interesting. Prop tech, we have Quinto Andar, where I'm on the board, and Loft have really done a super job of creating access for renters and for buyers in spaces that have not been well served, and doing that incredibly digitally. And the last one I'll point to, I know that this is an avalanche of ideas, Álvaro, is income streaming. So a lot of people in the developed and developing world get paid at the end of the month, but earn their money hourly. And that often leads to perturbations in their ability to be able to manage cash flow. So it's really, we have Minu that has done an amazing job growing really fast in Mexico City, that is actually saying, look, if you've earned the money during the course of the month, that's your money, and Minu will allow you to access it during the course of the month, so you don't have to wait for a big bang at the end of the month. That income streaming plays a key role, and it's really attacking the business that payday lenders have built over the years, which can be incredibly rapacious and take advantage of people. So, that's off the top of my head, and we're exploring ideas in all of those spaces with young and incredibly capable talent.
Well, thank you, Nigel, because that was very generous of you, and I hope the audience took notes, because at the end of the day, this is a lot about mega trends and sectors where there are opportunities, and your perspective on that is very much welcome. And on that, on also people taking notes, what are some of do's and don'ts from your point of view of an entrepreneur? What is it you're looking for an entrepreneur when you're looking to invest, on top of the things that you've told us?
That's interesting. It's a good question, and I think I would say that now 150, QED's invested in 150 companies now over 14 years. We have over $3 billion in management worldwide, and we have been really lucky enough to have invested in 21 unicorns. So our rate of investing is 1 in 7 of our companies that we invest in becomes worth $1 billion. And I'm not sure if we can keep that rate up, and of course, a lot of our companies are very new, so we would expect that number to actually increase. But that pattern, that behavior, watching those winners, gives us a sense of, at the very early stages, what is critical. So let me tick a few things off the top of my head. One is, I think that you need people who are obsessed with an issue. If you want a cozy life and you want to work 40 hours a week, go and work for Goldman Sachs, which is a hard life, or go and work for McKinsey, which is not easy, but don't become a founder of a fintech. It's really hard, and the odds are against you. And it's a real challenge to bring a fintech or any tech out of the ground, but particularly financial services, because of its complexity around credit and around treasury management, and the regulatory environment is not easy to navigate. So one, you have to be willing to take a large portion of your life and totally dedicate yourself. One. Two, you have to be focused on a real problem. It can't be something that is really too small and an irritant. It has to be something major that, as a result of your focus and your efforts, you're going to solve. And with that, the mission that comes along with that. And we've seen Confio and Creditas and Nubank be amazing at that. And three, you have to be fanatically focused on unit economics and test and learn. This comes out of the Capital One playbook. So often we see companies and they can get fantastic net promoter scores. They've got getting good customers. The cost to acquire is cheap. And then you say, well, how are you going to make money? Well, we're going to figure that out down the road. That usually is a recipe for tears, because if you don't have a view right from the beginning of how you're going to make money, lending or a piece of the payment pie, a subscription, some way of being able to monetize, chances are you'll run out of gas and it'll be a problem. Sometimes something serendipitous happens and it works out, but usually not. So, and the ability to be able to test and learn, the chances of you getting it right from the beginning is really low. What you have to do is be willing to probe and test and see what works. Frank Rotman, my partner, often says that the key thing about in the early stages of an investment is how much can you learn for the least amount of time and the least amount of money. So the early stages, crack the code on the model, and then later on it's about scaling. Both are difficult. So crack the code and be willing to test and learn. Think in terms of decision trees rather than single ways to score. If we use a football analogy, if you believe that the goalie kicks it out, the midfielder crosses it to the left wing crosses it, centre forward nods it in. If you have just one way of scoring, chances are it won't work, because you have to be able to do different things and develop different approaches. And you do that very, very early on in a very intense way. There's some thoughts.
And I love your soccer or football analogies, Nigel. And this has been very, very interesting. I learned a lot. The audience have learned a lot. But I'm now going to invite Elena, who I think has some questions from the audience. So Elena, please.
Hola, muchísimas gracias a los dos por esta exposición, por supuesto, muy interesantes insights. Gracias a Nigel y también a Álvaro, muy interesante lo que comentaron, les decía grandes insights para la audiencia. Y bueno, ahora tenemos una pregunta de selección de Finovista. Nigel, there are a lot of entrepreneurs here and they have a question for you. Why do some investment funds ask you to have a turnover to invest? If I'm already building, what do I need them for?
Well, look, the right partner in building your business from the beginning is not somebody that has money. I think money is a commodity, and I think that it's very, very important for founders to be really intentional about who they bring around the table that can help them. We often find that not only do investors in Latin America not understand Latin America, each country being very distinct historically, socially, politically, historically, but they also don't understand the vertical very well. And I think that what we've tried really hard to do at QED is not only to really understand financial services, and that's all we do, because it's so complicated and difficult, but also to really understand the variation just different countries in Latin America. So if I'm a founder looking for who can help me learn the most for the least amount of money in the least amount of time, so I can begin to make a big difference. And we've worked a lot with local VCs who have helped us learn about the country. Speak quickly about Kazakh, who've been amazing. Kona has been terrific. These are entities that have been really valuable in helping us learn the market. So find the people who can help you grow your business, not people that give you the highest term sheet.
Well, thanks Nigel, thanks Álvaro Rodríguez. Se nos terminó el tiempo y Finnosummit debe de continuar, así que les agradecemos muchísimo, muy valioso lo que nos han podido compartir sobre el pasado, pero también el presente y el futuro de las fintech en la región. Ya continuamos así más con Finnosummit Connect.